Hey everyone, welcome back to the series. This is part 2 of 8, examining communicated narrative sense making and how we can apply it to the world around us and also film and other theories. So now that we're here in part 2, let's talk about film and CNSM. So as a quick refresher, what is CNSM? Let's say you've missed part 1, let me fill you in. So CNSM Theory, or communicated narrative sense making, focuses on how storytelling allows human beings to make meaning from challenging times. This can promote health and well-being, both at an individual level, but also in a relational level. So when you share stories with people around you, they can help you cope with those difficult experiences. When it comes to stories as evolutionary tools, this idea is reinforced by Harvard Business's Lani Peterson, who wrote an article all about the science behind storytelling. Evolutionarily, she wrote, quote, "When we hear a story, not only are the language processing parts in our brain activated, but any other area in our brain that we would use when experiencing the events of the story are activated too. For example, sensory details like the client was as excited as if he had won the lottery engage a listener's sensory cortex." So, in other words, stories allow us to experience things before we actually experience them. This is a great communication tool, especially when sharing stories in a picture we can see here with younger generations, and we want to be there for them to ease the experience so that they don't have to learn the hard way like we did. We tell stories to help them on their way to be individuals just like us. Plus, an article from the Commons Social Change Library noted how storytelling is an essential leadership tool, as it can be used to help people overcome challenges and support the listeners in their daily lives. When we tell stories as a leader, we should ask what values we convey, where those values come from, and clearly lay out the challenge we overcame. And of course, keep in mind that all stories also follow the general pattern sequences of redemptive, contaminated, and ambivalent. Redemptive is where it starts out negative or ambivalent, and then the emotion turns more positive towards the end. Contaminated is where it starts out positive or negative, or neutral rather, and then it turns negative at the end. And ambivalent is it stays at the same level throughout the story. So, moving on to applications of CNSM in films and media. So we're going to start by talking about a book that kind of discusses meaning making from a storyteller's perspective. Christopher Booker wrote a novel titled 7 Basic Plots, which argues that there are only 7 universal narratives that all stories can fall under. These 7 narratives themselves are patterns that connect storytellers and the way they convey their message in the stories. Most classic stories are kind of part of these narrative patterns, and we appreciate those patterns, or rather we appreciate those stories because of the patterns they have embedded within them. So the 7 basic plots, as we can see on screen, are as follows. So overcoming the monster is essentially finding meaning in disasters and then caring for your family, which can of course be an inspiring tale of pushing through hardship no matter what. An example of this in film would be War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise and directed by, I believe, Steven Spielberg. Then Rags to Riches, a great example of this is Aladdin, where they're making meaning through forging your own path to your own goals. So Aladdin was initially a beggar and a thief, but then at the end, through his own personal development, he became the husband to I believe, Maharaja's daughter, Jasmine. There's The Quest. A great example of this is Moana. Moana braves the unknown and leaves home to save her people and find a purpose for her life. Again, making meaning through experiences and then storing those experiences with others. And again, another inspiring story. Then there's The Voyage and Return, which it can be classified including the Chronicles of Narnia, specifically The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, where the kids explore new areas and make new friends, which encourage strong social bonds, and then also new paths, the idea that new paths can lead us to make meaning, which is exactly what the kids do in that book and movie as well. For a comedy, a great example is The Big Lebowski. There are, of course, comedic effects in the more classical idea of comedy, but classically, comedy always has a happy ending, and in this case, there are tons of shenanigans in the middle. Tragedies then include stories like Macbeth, where there is a human character that is flawed, but doing their best, but regardless of what they do, that there is some kind of destiny or other force that kind of makes a downfall, that makes them have a downfall. And of course, that downfall can be a result of their own actions or from the actions of the other characters in the story, which is exactly what Macbeth is about. Then the last plot, the class archetypal plot, is storytelling. Not storytelling, rebirth, sorry. An example of this is the Christmas Carol, classic Christmas story, where through numerous experiences, a seemingly unchangeable character has a sudden change of heart because of how those experiences that they had suddenly changed them, usually for the better. Sometimes rebirth narratives are negative, but usually they have a positive connotation and a positive ending to them. So all in all, these archetypal stories, which human beings find satisfying because they have that kind of truth, that underlying truth aspect about them. They all share the idea of having the audience reconsider aspects of their lives through both entertaining them, but also having a moral, teaching a lesson. And that's exactly the purpose of a classical story. So, I hope you all learned a little something about these classic movies that could help you navigate your way through life. We will continue our journey now by connecting face theory to communicated narrative sense making. And then we can apply those connections to both the real world, what we see in real life, but also movies again, which will be great to walk through with those with you. So tune in to see what meaning we create and lessons we learn together in the next video. See you there.